12:05, and welcome to 590 Baseball on a Friday afternoon. It's September the 3rd, and my name is Jim Hewer. Glad you're hanging out with us on this afternoon. It's the Labor Day weekend. We've got a lot of things to get to throughout the afternoon here on 590 The Fan. We'll get to that in a little bit, but we're going to start the show right away and head up north and visit with Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Cardinals beat writer, and say good afternoon, Derek. How are you?
I'm all right. Greetings from Summerfest, which Milwaukee has rescheduled for September. So lots of crowds here, which will be interesting.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay, that'll be interesting for sure, no doubt.
Yeah.
How about let's get started with, before we get to Milwaukee, something I wanted to ask you about, your take on the chip bat dilemma the other night. I hadn't seen one of those in a while, and I just want to get your thoughts on that and what you saw and how it played itself out.
Yeah, I haven't seen one that ostentatious, maybe ever. Like, I mean, in looking at the, like, watching the video and everything like that, I was like, oh man, that bat was really chipped. I mean, it was illegal. I mean, they could have at any point in time told him, hey, you can't use that. But once it's used, then they can't really unwind time, right?
Yes.
Like, that's the George Brett situation. Is they're like, okay, look, if you had walked up there with this bat and they said, hey, man, you need to toss that out, then that's what it is. But once you use it, then you kind of have tacit approval for use, and they're not going to unwind what just happened. Just as they didn't with Brett, ultimately. So it was interesting because we're trying to figure out what exactly was going on. I mean, even watching it at the ballpark, it was like, wait a minute, are they – because it was clear the bat was apart, right? Like,
yes.
It wasn't whole. And so I was like, well, is this like a Super Bowl situation? What's going on here? And then eventually it kind of became clear what they were looking at. And I like Castellanos' explanation after the game where he said they didn't have any issues with it until I hit a grand slam. What about when Lester was carving me up?
Yes.
Which I thought was funny.
I did get a good chuckle out of that. I wanted to get your take on it because it was bizarre, and I kept watching it, and I was kind of like you. I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter now. It's done and over with. Yeah. Can't use the bat anymore. Okay. And I did like that there was some kid in the stands who got the bat.
Yep. Yeah, a little 8-year-old fan.
So just wanted to get your expert opinion on that because you were there and you can get a feel for what was going on. Derek Gould with us here on 590 Baseball. A lot of things to get to with this weekend series with Milwaukee, and let's just start with Waino going tonight for the Cardinals. And you have written about it recently as well, but I can't remember a time where the Cardinals have relied on one of their starters as heavily as they have with this guy in terms of every time they need something, he's there. And you wrote about how he's really thrived with that being part of the narrative for him.
Yeah. I mean, that was a conversation we had in Cincinnati, and that's kind of what dawned on me as I was talking to him. I was like, it was, and he brought it up in the story in today's Post-Dispatch about how the fact that you're needed and how that exhilarates somebody. But, like, the added element of that is the fact that you can provide. And he had such soreness and such questions and such concern and such unknowns there for a couple of years because his arm was just betraying him, let's be honest, and, was leading him toward possibility of retirement. But, last year he took on that game coming out of quarantine. We're back here in Milwaukee. The team is, I am. They're in the hotel where they spent so many days. I realized I was looking at the hotel I'm in last night. I'm like, oh, I'm back at the hotel where I spent so many days. But the fact that, like, I tried to describe, like, he's on the way to that first game there against the White Sox. And it's like, okay, the team needs something big here, and I have to provide it. And then that next step, oh, wait a minute, I have the ability to provide it, was such, like, this invigoration for him. And, we talked about, like, how do you walk away from that? Because if you can compete and your team needs you to compete and you have the ability to compete, that's like a huge driving force for anyone in a competitive business, and particularly for a professional athlete, of course. And, he just really has, like you said, responded to that role. I mean, there's no question last year he was the most valuable person on that team. I mean, what he did saved the season on the mound, off the mound, just away, just in so many ways. He protected the bullpen on his birthday. He covered innings when starters couldn't. He bought Jack Flaherty that extra week. There's so many things that he did that were essential to even them surviving, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then this year it's just become the same. I mean, and in the last 35 starts, he's one of the best pitchers in the National League. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball over the last 12 months.
And that's another thing I was going to ask you about. He's not going to win the Cy Young, but he definitely has to start getting some love for that. I see some people throwing out the list, and they'll go 5-6 deep, and they don't include him within that group. But I'm like, well, wait a minute. He's got to be on the list right now, don't you think?
Yeah, he's got to be. A strong September will assure it. A strong September, and then he'll receive Cy Young votes. An unbelievable September where he repeats his pitcher of the month like he was in August.
Yeah,
and he might win the thing.
Well, he could. You're right. He's putting up unbelievable numbers, and I admit it. I said this earlier. I said I'm sure as the season goes on, and this was before the season started. I said I'm guessing we'll see a real good Waino early and maybe not so much late. But it feels like he's getting better as the season goes on. He's not showing any wear and tear. Yeah, I mean, this will be a good test for him. The Brewers so often in this small window. He's got the Brewers and Dodgers in back-to-back starts. These are not just some of the best teams in baseball. These are teams that know him very well. So that'll be something to watch. I mean, I think he's just executing. I think there's a lot of stuff going on here with him. First of all, he's got great stuff. He's got great wits and tremendous savvy when it comes to how to use that stuff. I also think he's benefiting from the fact that everybody else is just throwing heat. And he is such a different look now from guys who are geared up to go, well, I'm going to face 95 today. I'm going to face 98. I'm going to face it with sink. And then here comes Adam Wainwright with a fastball that's at, 90, 91, maybe even a sinker. And then a curveball that remains among the best curveballs that we've ever seen in baseball from that same elevation, that same eye angle. And so, if people, if baseball fans and people listening can think of being the batter at the plate, and just think about something at shoulder level, just somebody near you at shoulder level. Think about somebody throwing something from that spot that could come directly at you like an arrow or at you like a frisbee, but it's at the same level, and how hard that is to judge. And that's what he's doing. And he freezes guys with that fastball, even though they're geared up to hit 95, 96. But that tells you how much respect they have to have for the curveball, because, they think, all right, well, it's coming, I better be ready to hit it. And then they get the fastball and can't do anything about it. It's interesting you brought this up, because this is something you reminded me. I wanted to ask you in regards with Wainwright, in terms of and you've got a lot of time, a lot of conversations with him. And my thought was more than.
Are you calling us old, Jimmy?
No. I'm just saying you're there every day, so you know.
I think that's a subtle way of saying that, we're old.
We're all old.
Picking up on this.
I'm older than all of you, so there you go.
I got to thinking about it every time. There's a question about Adam Wainwright where they ask him about, are you surprised what you're doing for your age? Are you surprised this? Are you surprised that? And then someone will mention, well, you've covered him a long time. I'm like, that's a subtle saying that we're old.
With that being said, but I'll still say I'm older than all of you, so I'm the oldest of the group. So there you go. When I hear him talk pitching, more so than any pitcher that I can remember, he responds to attacking batters by the way they respond to him as opposed to, like, you mentioned it's not always heat. More than any pitcher that I can remember, he will gauge how the body language of a hitter is into his pitches and determining what he throws next. Do you see that with him?
I think he talks more about it and is more open about that. And that actually stems from the relationship with Molina and the two of them. But also, it's part of like what will make Wainwright an excellent broadcaster, because he can articulate things like that. I know dozens of pitchers who do that, who either won't describe it because they think they're giving away a trade secret, which they're not, because we all watch the same thing, or just don't know how to articulate it. I think if you get the chance, I don't know how long he'll be around, but Hap will talk about that. And Hap will also be descriptive. John Lackey did that, and there's no way he'd rather have a root canal than tell you about it. He would rather have the writer do the root canal than talk about it. But he did that same kind of stuff. LeBlanc does that. So you got guys who, a couple guys I mentioned on the staff right now, and they're veteran guys. I think it's an interesting point you make, because you got to talk about like young guys, right? Are there young guys that do that? Are there, Zach Greinke, of course, does that. I mean, you watch him; he'll watch a hitter, and then he will go, "Hey, hitter, I've seen what you do. I'm going to tell you what pitch is coming," and you have no luck. Yeah. I think, I'm trying to think through when you go like the younger guys who have exceptional stuff, and are they doing that kind of thing? I think Kyle Hendricks does. Yes. Is he still a young pitcher? I don't know. I think Marquez with the Rockies, definitely a young pitcher. I think you see elements of him doing that. Not always too sometimes he's leading the catcher. To be honest, it looks like in watching those games. I think Walker Buehler does it.
I was just going to ask you about him.
Yeah. I think he has great stuff, but he and Will Smith, I think they do wonderful things I think they're very knowledgeable. They obviously have a great front office too. I mean, you can't look at that any other way, especially with like when you watch Urias go in there and you're like, oh, he's carving guys up. It's like, well, they have a plan. But I think Walker improvises quite a bit, and if that's Will Smith, if that's Kershaw. But I think back to your original question, I think Wainwright does an excellent job of explaining that.
Gotcha.
And one of the reasons why he does that, like a quick side note, is it also helps him build on the Yadier Molina Hall of Fame advocacy. So that's part of it. That's why he talks a lot about it, because it's a way to make public this private appreciation for Molina, so that there's greater recognition about what he does.
Gotcha. That's a great explanation. It's just one of the things that when you brought up everybody wants to talk velocity that I wanted to ask you about. I'll ask you this.
Great question.
Thank you. Moving forward, is John Lester picking up off of these guys? Because he's definitely better. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said it. I mean, he said one of the things he had to do was reinvent himself, and he was looking forward to talking to Wainwright to figure out how he did it and what he did. And I mean, we've seen Lester kind of dump his curveball, right? And go with that changeup. And he threw a couple changeups. Let me get this right. I think he threw a couple changeups to right-handed batters, which he had not done before much. And it was cutter, sinker, cutter, sinker, cutter, sinker, sinker, cutter, 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 sinker, sinker, sinker. And then he was like, all right, well, I'll let the defense work. And kind of a counterintuitive approach, because he was getting fly balls at a ballpark that is the size of a pinball machine. Yeah. But it worked because that changeup was such. I mean, it was effective enough that it was in the back of their heads, and then they'd be under it. So like a pop up wasn't gonna. I mean, it was gonna carry to left field. It wasn't gonna carry out of the field, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I guess. I mean, it's still early to tell, but I'm assuming he likes it here, and if he has more starts like he did the last time out, he'd be under consideration for being brought back. Yes.
You know what? I don't know about that.
Really?
Great.
Okay.
It's interesting. I know they have the door open for Wainwright's return. That's obvious, right? And they have such a strong interest in Hap. Hap had the difficult start the other day, right, in the doubleheader.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're making the choice, based on the most recent start, then you're like, well, they prefer Lester. But that's not how they'll make that decision. And the interest in Hap is long-standing. So I wouldn't rule it out. I don't know how eager Lester would be to return. I just don't have a feel for that.
No,
he didn't choose the Cardinals.
Right.
And he made that clear. So, and I don't want to get into the whole, he's a guy who has competed against the Cardinals for a long time. In October during a season with the Cubs. So maybe seeing behind the door there, maybe that makes the appeal better. Maybe it's a mutual appeal. I'm just not sure.
No, that's fair enough.
But he would have to overcome. He'd have to pitch great, and the Cardinals would have to be like, well, we're glad we had Hap. We've always wanted him, and it just didn't work out. We're going to move on.
Moving on, as we talk baseball with Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He's up in Milwaukee. Cardinals get set to take on the Brewers with the 3-game series this weekend. In terms of Alex Reyes, he got a game in last time out. Where do you think the manager moves in using him next in terms of what kind of situation?
I would imagine he gets used late in games with 4-run or more leads, or he gets used when say there's a matchup in the 7th with a tie game, or a 3-run lead, and it's the part of the lineup that he has an opportunity to be the best at. Like if you're looking at the bottom of the Brewers order, you might see him in that spot today.
Gotcha. I was curious because I know the manager, he does like to get guys back in there as soon as he can. He's had his days off. He pitched well. And then I imagine, we're at September 3rd. Every game matters now. So was wondering.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of Giovanni Gallegos and Yanis Cabrera. That's just the Cardinals are they're going to go to them quite a bit. I mean, they were really encouraged with what they saw from Cabrera and what he's done against teams not named Pittsburgh. So you're going to see quite a bit of him, and they of course are falling hard for Luis Garcia too.
Yeah, he's done very, very well for them.
He's got a power sinker that plays. He
does, and it's a far cry from what he hit the first batter he faced in Chicago when he first came up.
Yeah.
And you went, uh-oh. Yeah. But he is.
Yeah, we're like, we've seen this before.
No doubt about that. I do have to ask you about Tommy Edman. What's working for him now that things are changed? He's been very good for them lately.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think he has bent the leadoff hitter more to his style than bent his style more to the traditional leadoff hitter. And this is, I know, a conversation a little bit because of what Colton Wong had to say about being the leadoff hitter for the Brewers and what the Cardinals had asked him to do as far as grinding pitches. That it's an interesting thing. I mean, Colton's playing in a different ballpark, and it is something that speaks to, his comments, if you read beyond them, or if you know the circumstance well, which I'm sure a lot of Cardinal fans know, is they play at different ballparks. And one of the things that the Cardinals have really, had to look to is like, how do you play a modern style of offense with a pitcher-oriented ballpark? Like, how do you do with this? And how does the hitter have to change? I mean, look at Paul Goldschmidt, right? Like Paul Goldschmidt has the most opposite field home runs of any hitter in the National League, I think in baseball, but definitely in the National League since he debuted, right? How's opposite field power play at Busch Stadium? Not great all the time, Yep. So he has worked to also pull for power, and we've seen that. We've also seen the 5 threes that result from that, right? Like the hard ground balls, the pull foul balls, that kind of stuff. With Tommy Edman, Tommy wanted to work on his walk rate, and he's a ball and play guy, and ball and play guys who rely on making a lot of contact, some of that contact coming on the ground, sometimes, they're going to go through stretches where those balls don't get through. And in today's game where shifts are so prevalent, and he's a switch hitter, and, he was somewhat neutralized from the left side unless he hit it out of the park or off the wall. And that's really not his game. He's more of like I said, like a contact-oriented guy. The walks weren't there, and so the contact wasn't getting hits. And, and he was trying to be both the leadoff hitter and table setter, and that wasn't quite his personality. But I think what you've seen is somewhat correction, right? Like the luck is going to come back, and the baseballs hit him hard enough, and they're going to find holes.
Yep.
But I also think, like, he is going about it from, like, kind of the opposite. I was talking to Schilt about this the other day, and it's like, usually it was like with these middle-of-the-order hitters like Albert Pujols and Paul Goldschmidt. Not so much Nolan Arenado because of the style the hitter he is, but like Anthony Rizzo or Chris Bryant, right? Christian Yelich.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you start seeing them take walks, they're about to go on they're just about to take off.
Right.
Like Albert Pujols was like, I mean, if you saw him like struggle for a little bit, which for him was like 4 hours, not 4 weeks.
Right.
But if you saw him struggle for 5 games, right? And it's like, oh, he's kind of off a little bit. And then he started taking walks, like he get 2 walks, right? Or he'd take a couple walks from a starter. He'd be like, oh my gosh, he's going to go on a burst here. And then it's home run, and it's like Easter, and it's 3 home runs, and his buddy walked in, it's 4 home runs, whatever. But Tommy has doing it a little bit the other way, right? Like, his hits are leading to more walks. And I think that's what Schilt and I were talking about, is like, that's a fascinating way to go about it, is, he is hitting and hitting harder with pitches in the zone. And thus the walks are coming because pitchers are like they're trying to get him to reach outside the zone, and he's not. And then with Goldschmidt there parked behind him, they don't want to walk him, so they have to come back in the zone, and that's where he's getting his base hits, if that makes sense.
No, that does.
And so he doesn't have a lot of strikeouts. Great.
Mm-hmm.
He still doesn't have a whole lot of walks, which is not great when you're in an on-base percentage position. But those walks are increasing because the hits are increasing, and that's starting to elevate that on-base percentage.
Talking with Derek Gould, one more thought before we let Derek go, and the reason I'm going to get this one more in because it's not going to really matter next week, but September call-ups with 2 more added spots to the roster. Is that the right number?
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been an advocate for this for a long time. I wrote in 2010 that they needed to do healthy scratches, like hockey. They needed if they wanted to do September call-ups, then cap it at 30, and then you need to have 5 healthy scratches. And they can't be the pitchers who are in the rotation for that series or something like that. I outlined it all. I was told that was passed around actually and discussed as part of the when they were doing the negotiations and stuff, this notion of healthy scratches. And so yes, it's going to make for a far better game. It's going to make for a far better finish for the Cardinals because they are playing the Iowa Cubs so much down the stretch. It's if the 40-man roster was allowed to swell, you would see. Look, the Dodgers would be absurd. But let's just be honest. The Dodgers would be absurd about it. Because they can be. And they would load up with pinch runner specialist here, and we have this batter who is 7 for 8 against, Gausman. And we're going to use him here. And, you'd see like a 35-man, basically they would just have like a special teams group. That's what they would have. It would be a baseball team with a special teams group. And that would be absurd. And, and the Cubs would load up with people to just cover innings. And you might see all kinds of pitching changes. It would not, if they had gone this route with the way modern bullpenning is done, I just think we'd see too many games in the regular season like we saw that last game of the playoffs for the Padres against the Cardinals where it was 9 pitchers handling 9 innings. And that's just no way to go about things.
I'm there with you. I like that explanation. Derek, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate the time as always. joining us on 590 Baseball. Before I let you go, anything you got coming up that we should keep an eye on in the Post this weekend?
Just coverage galore from Milwaukee. I keep wanting to say Miller Park, and by the time I get to the park, I'll realize it's not. I think it's AmFam
it is.
Stadium now. It'll always be Miller Park in my heart.
I'm there with
County
you.
Stadium. Yeah, so I know just a bunch of coverage from there, just the usual stuff. Exclusive stuff online, updated throughout the day, and then expanded stuff in the morning paper.
Awesome. I'll look forward to reading each and everything that you guys put out. Thank you for the time, and have a great weekend up there.
All right, thanks. Yep, good to hear from you, Jimmy.
You got it. That's Derek Gould with us live from Milwaukee here on 590 Baseball. Make sure you catch everything that he and Rick Hummel and the other guys on the staff do at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, stltoday.com. Get a subscription, and they'll keep you up to date on lots of things. We're going to get our look around Major League Baseball here in a little bit. I got a couple things on this day in history, but something occurred to me when, I was looking at a few things, and we're going to have a This Day in History from 1984, and it made me realize from a baseball standpoint, man, I do overlook the race of the wild card, because if you go back to, let's just pick the year 1984, races were over by this day on September the 3rd. The Cubs had a 6-game lead, and the San Diego Padres had like a 7 or 8 game lead, and that was it, man. There was nothing else to look forward to. But the wild card, as much as I didn't like it when it first came out, has given us an opportunity to have meaningful baseball, because this series with the Cardinals and Brewers right now is meaningful in a lot of ways. For the Cardinals, it's meaningful for the Brewers because they can, work their way towards home field advantage for the playoffs. But for the Cardinals, they're still alive in the wild card with the with what is it, 2.5 games out as I look at the schedule or the standing. Today. It makes the game relevant here for the final month, because let's face it, if this was just a division winners get in, you would see that this really wouldn't mean anything in the Central Division right now. So I'm thankful for the wild card. Let's just put it that way as I looked at some things. We have a lot to get to before we get out of here at 1 o'clock. Then we'll turn it over into the reset. But want to pass this along to you. Hockey Sense today from 3 until 4. Andy Strickland has Colton Parayko on with him today. Signed his new contract this week, and Colton will be with Andy. And don't forget Top Shooters with the Cam Jansen Show, and that comes your way from 2 to 3 over in Columbia, Illinois. We step aside. We've got much more baseball coming up on the other side of this break here on 590 The Fan. It's 12:37, back at it on 590 Baseball. I'm Jim Hewer. It is Labor Day weekend. If you're driving somewhere, be careful, be safe. Enjoy your great weekend. It's always the unofficial close of summer, but not a bad day out there right now, although it's cloudy here in Kirkwood. But the temperature is quite comfortable. Cards getting ready for their weekend series with the Milwaukee Brewers. A lot of things at stake for the Cardinals, still in that wild card hunt. But let's go around the world of Major League Baseball with some news and notes. And we're going to start with a team we haven't talked a lot about here on 590 Baseball, and that's the team with the best record in the American League, the Tampa Bay Rays. They've got 84 wins, and they've had the number 1 rated prospect in Major League Baseball called up not too long ago, and that's Wander Franco. And Franco is doing something historical.
And there it is, a base hit through that hole. Here comes Zunino in to score. Cruz heads to the plate. The throw is not in time and loose. Espinal backs it up. There's a throw down to second with Franco trying to get in there, and he's going to be tagged out. But Franco drives in a couple. He gets a base hit, extends his streak to 30, gives the Rays a 6-1 lead.
That from earlier in the week, and that's Wander Franco, and that was extending his on-base streak to 30 games. He's now at 33 straight games where he has reached base. He is the third longest streak right now for players 20 or younger to reach base consecutively. Only Mickey Mantle and Frank Robinson had longer streaks on players under the age of 20. Mickey Mantle's was 36. Franco, as I said, is at 33. And Frank Robinson has the all-time mark at 43. That means he's involved with two, in the same conversation, with two Hall of Famers. That's a pretty awesome thing for Wander Franco. He's 33 plate appearances since his last strikeout. He's just been really good. The second longest in the MLB this year. The longest was Jose Altuve with 35. Look, Tampa Bay's got it going. They're doing all things right. They've extended their advantage in the division race over the New York Yankees to 6.5 games. They are doing things well. And why? Well, they have 268 runs scored after the seventh inning. That's best in Major League Baseball. And more importantly, get this number for the Tampa Bay Rays. They have the most runs scored in the ninth inning in Major League Baseball, having scored 73 runs in the ninth inning alone. The Rays are just good. They may not be the sexiest team out there with all these great superstars, but they are one of the best teams in baseball. I slipped and gave you the note of the Phillies. Well, they're doing things well. The commish, Rick Hummel, told us don't sleep on the Phillies early this week on 590 The Fan, and he's dead on.
2-2 pitch. That one is hit high and deep to right. It is a moonshot, and it's gone into the Nationals bullpen. A 2-run home run by Bryce Harper. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
A couple of years ago, the Phillies gave Bryce Harper that big-time contract, and it's paying off for them now. For the month of August that was just completed, Bryce Harper had a .333 batting average, a .455 on base, and a .776 slug. In the 28 games for the month of August, he had 25 runs scored, 10 homers, 25 RBIs. He walked 22 times in 28 games and only struck out 21 times. His manager is Joe Girardi, and he's excited about Harper.
He's been incredible. What he's done for this club has been absolutely incredible. And he has that ability to, all the time. I mean, that's how good of a player he is. He's one of those guys you don't necessarily go and, get a soda or a hot dog when he comes up to hit. you kind of stay in your chair and you wait to see the at-bat. But he's meant so much to us. He's grinded it out. He's played every day. He's stolen bases. He's played good defense. He's walked. He's hit home runs. He's driven in runs, big hits. To get us a 2-0 lead right away, was great. And he's been special.
For the Phils, they've won 6 in a row. They've passed the Cardinals by a half game in the wild card. And right now, as we start play today, they are just 2 games behind the Cincinnati Reds for that second wild card spot. They were so good in August. They were 17-11, the most wins in the month of August for the Philly franchise since 2011. And back, one more note for the Phils and Bryce Harper. He ended up with that month of August that I spoke of, where he ended up with 20-plus runs, 20 extra base hits, 20 walks, and 20 RBIs in the month. There are only 2 players in that franchise's history, 2, that have ever done that in 1 month. They are Jim Thome and Mike Schmidt, Hall of Famers as well. Great conversation to be in. And, oh, by the way, yesterday they were down 6-0 in Washington, and they found a way.
1-2 pitch. Swung on, grounded sharply right through the second baseman into right field. 1 run will score. Here comes Galvis. He will score. And the Phillies come all the way back, and they've tied it up. It's 6-6. Here in the top of the 8th inning.
Taking advantage of some help from the Nationals, they win the game, and they've won 6 in a row. Phillies, as the commish told us, keep an eye out for them. They are a half game ahead of the Cardinals now in that wild card race. Cardinals will take on the Milwaukee Brewers in this 3-game set as we continue our look around Major League Baseball, and they have one of the hottest guys going on the mound, Corbin Burnes.
2-2, and he got him. A buzz bomb on the outside corner. 97-mile-an-hour fastball from Burnes and a backwards K of Buster Posey. Looking like a Cy Young Award winner right here tonight. Corbin Burnes, a 3-up, 3-down 6th.
That was in his last start against the San Francisco Giants. Corbin Burnes in his last 14 starts is 7-0. The ERA is 2.28. over those last 14 starts, 86 2/3 innings. He's only walked 19. He struck out 108, and the Brewers are 12-2 in those starts. You don't need the Brewers to tell you about how good he is. The guy who faced him a lot when he was in Chicago and now in San Francisco is Chris Bryant. He knows how good Corbin Burns has been.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, I thought I was getting away from him coming over here, but seen him twice now. He's one of the best in the game. He's just got, 5+ pitches and throws strikes, and then, when he's not throwing strikes, it looks like it's going to be a strike. So he's a really good pitcher. You got to tip your cap to him. He had a great game.
Cardinals will get Corbin Burns on Sunday as he will face John Lester. The pitching matchup on Saturday in this Cards-Brewers series. KK Kim against Hauser on Saturday. And tonight, obviously, Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina as they go at the Battery for the 300th time for the Cardinals. And it's Peralta for the Brewers against the Cardinals tonight. Going through our look around Major League Baseball, the Yankees, they can't catch Tampa Bay, we talked about earlier, but they got their ace going.
Swing and a miss. 15 strikeouts. That's an ace. Team's on a 4-game losing streak. Strikeout 15. Don't walk anybody. Turn a 3-1 lead over your bullpen. That's a big boy performance.
That big boy performance is Garrett Cole. He's getting it done. He's got the third most 11-plus strikeout no-walk games in the history of Major League Baseball now at 15. Just ahead of him, Roger Clemens with 16 and Randy Johnson with 25 of those 11-plus strikeout games and no walks. The Yankees, they're trailing the Tampa Bay Rays, but they're making a stranglehold on that first wild card spot. They entered the weekend with a record of 77 and 56. Now, the race out west in the National League, it gets interesting because the Dodgers have finally caught the Giants.
The 0-1 on the hands, left side. Turner's there. Hello, first place. They are tied with the Giants in first place for the first time since April.
Yeah, it's been a long time since the Dodgers, who everybody knows and everybody feels has the best talent in the National League. They're loaded. They're going to be here this weekend or coming week against the Cardinals, and Albert Pujols will be here. So Cardinal fans have that to look forward to. But the Dodgers are playing good baseball. They just were never able to catch the San Francisco Giants, but the Giants have kind of hit a skid a little bit. They have found some issues with their starting pitching lately, and that has allowed the Los Angeles Dodgers to catch the San Francisco Giants. And it's interesting in reading some of the columns out in San Francisco this week. They struggled against Milwaukee. There's no embarrassment in that. We know how good the Brewers' pitching is, but the San Francisco Giants took it on the chin, let's just say. They salvaged one game against the Milwaukee Brewers. And the columnists are like, oh, my goodness, this is like a big collapse for the San Francisco Giants. Not really. If you look at it, starting play today, the San Francisco Giants still have won 85 games, and they've lost only 49. They've struggled lately. Their pitching has been a problem because of health, but Gabe Kapler's their manager. Everybody loved Gabe Kapler prior to falling out of first place. And Kapler's, he says, we'll be fine.
Now is the right time to really show a sense of urgency, continue to dig in on our process, but also not to have any panic. There's no need for that. It's just the balance between urgency and hanging in there with a really, really good team and a good process. It's been strong for a really long time.
Yeah, the Giants have been strong, and they went out of first place for a brief moment yesterday, but they found a way. John Miller on the call as the Giants pulled even with the Dodgers.
The pitch. Change up. There's a high drive into deep left field. This one has a chance. Adios! Pelota! In the big spot, Estrada hits the big fly, and that's the backbreaker. It's a big inning. 5-1 Giants.
Giants with that 5-1 win over the Brewers yesterday pulled them even with the Dodgers. And, oh, by the way, this weekend, circle it. You know, we're going to be watching Cards and Brewers for Cardinal fans, but late night baseball, you have the San Francisco Giants hosting the Los Angeles Dodgers in a 3-game set. And this will be a must-watch if you're a baseball fan. The pitching matchups are interesting, though. As of right now, this is what the pitching matchups are. David Price goes tonight against to be determined. Julio Urias goes on Saturday for the Dodgers against to be determined. And on Sunday, the getaway day, Walker Buehler, the ace for one of the aces for the Dodgers, goes against to be determined. The reason why the Giants have had a lot of injuries. Their manager, again, Gabe Kapler, he was asked yesterday, what's the pitching matchups and what's the situation for your starters in this crucial matchup with the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I don't anticipate a rotation per se. I think we're gonna look at each game and see what the best way to win those are. We're gonna have some discussions right now. I had mentioned pregame and in the days that led up to today that it was probably going to be dependent on how we used our bullpen, and I think it's fair for you now to be thinking about that. But usually these discussions are going to kind of play out now for the next few hours and potentially into tonight. And we'll make the best decision for the Giants.
It'll be interesting for sure. You know, we've had discussions all year long on this radio station, 590 The Fan, about the Cardinals and not having enough pitching, especially in the month of June. But the Giants, first place Giants, setting up with a key matchup with the Los Angeles Dodgers in September, and they don't even know who is going to start for them. And you wonder why? Well, Johnny Cueto was just placed on the IL with a little bit of an elbow problem. No word on how bad his is. It's the second time this week he was put on the IL. He was originally put on the IL for COVID issues. I believe it was for tracing, but he came back. He started, was not very good in his start against the Giants, and now he's back on the IL with an elbow issue. Alex Wood is on the IL. He's been very good for them. The left-hander, former Dodger, he's on the IL for at least 2 more starts. He has been placed on the IL because of COVID, and apparently he's dealing with some issues with COVID-related. Kevin Gausman has not been as good for them in the last 10 starts. He was dynamite for them early on, the former Baltimore Orioles starter, and has seemed to have found something there out in San Francisco. But the last 10 starts, not quite as good. In his last 10, a 4.28 ERA, and the opponent's batting average against Kevin Gausman in those last 10 is 2.66. While he is 4-2, the ERA has not been good, and he's got to be better. The one saving grace for the San Francisco Giants in this series, and we'll see if he starts, has been Logan Webb as one of their starters. He has had 14 straight starts of 2 runs or less, and that is the best in Giants history. Think of that. All the good pitchers they've had over the course of the San Francisco Giants history, including Juan Marichal, none of them have had 14 straight starts with 2 runs or less. Logan Webb has. He's not listed as being one of the starters in this series yet, but the Giants will definitely need him as they face the Los Angeles Dodgers this weekend. One of the great matchups this weekend in Major League Baseball. It's 590 Baseball. My name is Jim Heward. Glad you're hanging out with us here today. Time now for our day in history. It is the 3rd of September, and it's a Friday, and it was on this day in 1984. Some magic was made by a Cardinal reliever and a future Hall of Famer.
Suter brings it to him. 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss. He struck him out, and that is a new National League record. 38 saves for Bruce Suter. His teammates come to the mound, and they congratulate him.
In 1984, Mike Shannon on the call. He broke the record with 38 saves and a 7-3 win over the New York Mets. He would end up with 45 on the year. The Cardinals that year, not a good season overall. They finished 84 and 78. The Cubs were dynamite that year. That's where they were the darlings and lost to the San Diego Padres in the playoffs. But on this day in 84, Suter set the mark for saves in the National League. And Joaquin Andujar in that day ended up with 18 wins. For the season that year, I mentioned Suter had 45 saves. He had 122 innings pitched in 71 appearances. The ERA was 1.54. It was the last season Bruce Suter would pitch as a Cardinal, would leave to Atlanta and become a Brave in the offseason in 85. And his career would quickly come to an end because of some arm issues. And I believe he still has his contract giving him some dividends with the Atlanta Braves. I don't think that has expired yet, but Bruce Suter, one of the Cardinal greats, breaking a record on this day in 84, not to mention, I'll remind you that the most saves now in Major League Baseball in the season belongs to Frankie Rodriguez. K-Rod had 62 as a member of the Angels. On this day in 1996, no audio for this, but Ron Gant had 2 doubles and 3 runs scored as the Cardinals won in the middle game of a 3-game set against the Houston Astros. And it was the reason I bring that up. It was a fun series back in 1996 between the 2 top teams in the Central Division. And the Cardinals used that victory to go a half game ahead of the Houston Astros in the Central Division. It was against the Killer Bees. Just good baseball in September. And hopefully that's what we get tonight as the Cardinals get ready to take on the Milwaukee Brewers. Cardinals obviously not on that same level this year that they were in 96, but that game had Clayton, Langford, and Gant in the lineup, followed by Jordan, Mabry, Gaetti, Pagnazzi, Alicea, and the winning pitcher that day was Todd Stottlemyre. Final note on this day in history, let's go to the year of 2001 out in San Diego.
Swing and a ground ball. He has it. The throw to first. Bud Smith has pitched the 9th no-hitter in Cardinal history since the 1900s. He is being mobbed by his teammates over there. They're all over him. They're killing him. He pitches a no-hitter, and the Cardinals win it 4-0. They're mobbing him down there. There are cameramen all over. A no-hitter for the rookie, Bud Smith. Unbelievable.
September 3rd of 2001, Bud Smith, the young lefty, the crafty lefty with a no-hitter, and everyone thought, whoa, boy, what could this career be like as a Cardinal moving forward? It was short. It was not all that long, but one of the great moments in Cardinal history on this day in 2001. The lineup that day for the Cardinals had Vigna at second leading off. You had Polanco at third, J.D. Drew batting third, Pujols, Edmonds, Mark McGwire, Renteria, Eli Marrero behind the plate, and Bud Smith on the mound. He had 4 walks and 7 strikeouts on that day, and that wraps up this day in history for today, the 3rd of September. It is a Friday. I'm glad you've hung out with us here on 590 Baseball. We have much more coming up with the reset as we kind of change our mood to college football to start the reset in the 1 o'clock hour. We'll hear from Mike Kelly. He had a great sit-down and conversation with Bernie Miklasz yesterday as they preview Mizzou taking on Central Michigan. And don't sleep on Central Michigan. I'll tell you why coming up in the next hour. The Fighting Illini take on UTSA, and that comes your way tomorrow night here on 590 The Fan with a 5:30 pregame show. The IlliniGuys.com will have a conversation to kind of preview that game, and we'll review a couple cool games from last night and a preview of some of the good games that are coming up this weekend as we get set for college football going. That's going to do it for 590 Baseball today. Cards and Brewers. It's the 300th time that Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright will be the battery for the Cardinals as they take on Peralta and the Milwaukee Brewers. Stick around. Much more on the way here on 590 The Fan as we go through a Labor Day weekend Friday on 590 The Fan.